Welcome, weary travelers. I am a lady of Westeros, and together we will dive deep into every corner of the realm of A Song of Ice and Fire. We will journey beyond the wall, across the narrow sea, and deep into the mysteries that have shaped this world. Join me as we uncover the legends and the histories, the kings and queens, the creatures and myths that shape the Seven Kingdoms and beyond. From the age of heroes to the reign of the dragons, and all the whispers of tales in between, this is where we will unravel the secrets of George R. R. Martin's world. Deep in the ancient forests of Westeros, there lies a forgotten story, a tale of blood, conquest, and a bond between the first men and the children of the forest, one that shaped the lands and its people into the very present day. In the ancient past of Westeros, long before the rise of the Targaryens and their dragons, before the Stark kings ruled over Winterfell, the land was shaped by the first men and the children of the forest. When the first men arrived in Westeros, they brought with them fire and bronze. They clashed with the children of the forest, the small beings who have lived on that continent for thousands of years. For generations, these two people were locked in a war that threatened to destroy the very land that they fought for. But in time, a truce was formed. They called it the Pact. It was formed on the Isle of Faces with the first men and the children, where they came together to end the bloodshed and to divide the land. The first men would settle and start to farm, while the children of the forest would keep to their forest and their rivers. But was this really the end of the story? What if there was more than signing of the pact? What if there was more to this bond between the first men and the children? What if the first men and the children's bond went beyond mere words? What if there was a deeper connection, one of blood? In the Tales of Westeros, it is said that the first men have a special connection to the weirwoods, a connection to the old gods, a bond that they gained from the children of the forest. But perhaps it was more than mere connection, more than just passing on their own traditions and faith to the new people that have settled in this land. Just as the Valerians are imbued with the blood of the dragon, just as they possess magical abilities to claim dragons, to control dragons, to bend them to their will. And that is a topic we'll go into a little bit deeper in another video on another day. But with that, could the first men have been imbued with the blood of the forest? I think that amongst the bloodshed of war, with the war between the children and the first men as they tried to conquer Westeros, I think that there were darker deeds that unfolded during this war. Darker things than just merely murder. It's terrible, and mass genocide for against the children. But the first men, as they came through, they took what they wanted. They took and just overran the children with their stronger weapons, with their larger bodies. The children, again, are small little people. But I think that as they went through conquering and claiming land for themselves, warring with the children, that the things that they took were more than just, again, the land. I think they took the bodies of the children. We won't use the one word that you're not supposed to use here on YouTube, the big R word. I don't want to get demonetized or anything, if I could ever get monetized. Anyway, but I think that these forced unions did occur. It happens in all war. Jorah Mormont tells Dany, as at some point, I forget exactly when, I think it might have been during the conquering of the sheep people, the moon people, anyway, during that time, he tells her that when you put a sword in a man's hand, the beast comes out. You see during, again, the sacking of the moon people, the sheep herder people with Miriam Mastor, the things that the Khalasar does to the female slaves as they take them prisoner. They don't just kill them, they imprison them and sell them as slaves and do all kinds of unforgivable acts on these women. And with that, I think that, of course, there would have been children that would have been conceived through these violent unions. Um, but unlike the Valerians, whose power again comes from the blood of the dragon, the first men have, I think, imbued themselves with the blood of the children through these cruel acts. Legend suggests that the first man may have even bred with the children of the forest. There are a few little things, either during the war or perhaps after the signing of the pact, because again, just like cruel things happen to innocent people during war, when war is like coming to an end, the best way to seal alliances and forge new bonds is through marriage. And perhaps some of that went on as well. And through doing that with these unions, I think the first men again inherited some of the abilities from the children of the forest, the ability to speak through trees, perhaps even have be what allowed them to be Greenseers and wargs and all of the different magical things that the Stark children possess, and even some of the wildlings possess as well. So I think this mingling of blood may have created a legend, a legacy that survives to this day, again, through those like the Stark children or even the Karstarks or the Boltons, anyone that has like real like close blood to the first men. Further south, it gets a little bit more diluted, and I don't think those powers radiate as much or come through as much with the Southerners as, again, the Northerners like the Starks. But this legacy is one of magic, one of connection to the old gods, the ability to, again, do things such as skin change and have the green sight. This is passed down through the generations, and the Starks particularly were like big figures later on, and we'll get into one of the Starks later. I think he's a Stark, but um, while there are very few written records that remain, the oral tradition does hint at the closeness between these two people. So again, I think skin changing and all of that, the Greenseers, they come from mingling with the children of the forest. The first men were able to then control animals with their minds, bond with the magic of the forest, and pass it down to their kin. This power being passed down throughout generation after generation, I do think came from the children of the forest themselves, from either the forced union or perhaps even marriage bonds or something back in before the way before the present day. But could some of the same blood that allows the children to bind themselves to nature truly been passed down to the first men? I'd like to know what you think on that. You know, what is your thought? Is that how the Starks perhaps got the abilities that they have? I think it's something worthy to think about. One of the most infamous figures in the war between the children of the forest and the first men was Brandon of the Bloody Blade. I don't think they particularly like name him as a Stark throughout the history of Westeros, but I think that he is a Stark. Brandon, there's so many Brandons. Brand the Builder, I think they were all Starks, and I don't think I'm alone in that thought. Family names throughout history repeat so often. Doing my own family ancestry with the ancestry which one was it, ancestry.com, and doing the tracking of the family tree, it was so interesting to see so many of the different names that passed down, and it's like I didn't even know where that name came from. Wow, we have so many of them. Taylor, and there are a couple. Anyway, I think the same thing again goes with the children. I mean, sorry, the first men, and the Starks. You know, Martin does. He seems to truly try to keep it a little bit like, you know, logical, excuse me, real world kind of way of doing things. There is magic, but it has to make sense. There is awesome, crazy, wild things that happen, but logically they have to flow or it doesn't feel right, and he's really good about doing that. So I think, again, Brandon being repeated so often throughout history of Westeros and all that, and throughout the history of the Stark family, that even Brandon of the Bloody Blade here is a Stark. But according to legend, he drove the giants from the Reach. He was a total bad A, right? He waged the brutal war against the children of the forest, slaying so many at the Blue Lake that they ended up renaming it to the Red Lake because of the amount of blood that was spilled. Children of the forest blood. Um, Brandon's conquest, though, I do not think was only one of violence through war, but again, perhaps forced unions of sorts, or even blending of the two people through, again, marriage. But his nickname was Brandon of the Bloody Blade, and we'll get into a little bit of who is it? Brandon Stark. Okay, he what is it? How does it go? Let me find the quote. Hold on. Okay, this is what he is said to have said. Brandon Stark, Ned Stark's older brother, the one who was supposed to marry Catelyn. He says, I want it sharp enough to shave the hair off of a woman's thing." He's talking about his sword, okay? He used to say, and how he loved to use it. "A bloody sword is a beautiful thing," he told me once, said Barbary Dustin. Brandon was never shy about taking what he wanted. Again, parallel to the first men, taking what they wanted, coming in and just doing whatever they needed to take the land for themselves, no matter how bloody their blades got. But it goes on to, she says, "I am an old woman now, a dried up thing, too long a widow, but still I remember the look of my maidenhead's blood on his thingy the night that he claimed me." I think Brandon liked the sight of it as well. And again, I think it plays hand in hand with Brandon Stark, Ned's brother, being very much like the first men and Brandon of the Bloody Blade. Um, it's just too much of a coincidence, and again, Martin doesn't really do that without reason. It just is how it is. But again, Brandon, hear my cuckoo clock going off. Okay, I love my cuckoo clock. But Brandon's conquest, again, was more than just a violence, I think. It was taking enforced union. It wasn't just war and sword against sword. It was other ways of dominating people. And though the children of the forest were like slaughtered in probably mass numbers, some had to have been taken captive again. And through this violent union, the blood of the children had to have seeped into the blood of the first men and flowed down the generations. Um, it just it just makes sense to me, and I'd like to know if you guys agree. So with that, it seems to be that even though this pact was signed, bad things I think happened before the pact. Maybe after the pact, they did some marriage rites, and they taught the first men, the original Starks of Winterfell, before Winterfell was Winterfell, to worship the old gods, to pray to the weirwoods, and still keep the tradition of the old ways. And they do to this day. I talk as if I'm in Westeros, right? But to the current events in the book and all, they keep the old ways. In the books, there's a point where Stannis is wanting to like make Jon Snow Lord of Winterfell so that he can rally the North on Stannis' side. But Stannis not only wants to make him Lord of Winterfell, which would like make him end up betraying the Night's Watch vows, but Melisandre, she wants him to burn the Heart Tree, and he cannot bring himself to destroy and dishonor his father's gods, his gods. And so again, that blood, that tradition, that bond goes deep and flows to the very, very present day. The first men were not the last to conquer Westeros, hence why they're the first men. They weren't the last, they were the first. But about 6,000 years after the signing of the Pact, a new group of men arrived in Westeros, the Andals, with their steel swords and the faith of the Seven at their back. Okay, while the Andals fought fiercely against the first men, they did not. Um, they were not able to totally exterminate them, especially again in the north where the Starks and many of the others still reside, claiming the blood of the first men, as well as like the wildlings claim blood of the first men. Um, so instead, these two people begin to assimilate. That's what you do, right? It's in our own history. You see it happen with the Vikings coming in to England, the Romans invading before even that. All of the different time periods when new people come in, you either, it seems, to wipe out the previous occupants absolutely totally through bloodshed and awfulness. But I think the majority of the time through history, they seem to, again, assimilate. They blend their cultures, they mingle, they marry, they have children and ancestors that just the generations flow, right? But they assimilate and blend together. And I think that you can only do so much war, right? After a while, you got to be like, this is enough. Let's just, you have my daughter and we'll quit fighting. I'll give you some sheep and you'll like, it'll be good, right? That's kind of how it goes throughout history. And again, in this world, I think it probably went about the same, you know? So, with that though, the first men then spread the blood of the children of the forest to the Andals, which perhaps gives some of the Southerners, a few here and there maybe, the ability to tap into magic, to be able to do all the different things that the Stark children do, but you never really see it in the books or in the show. And I think that would be like really cool to have like one rare or something. But if you think of like those like nettles, okay, I know this is a totally different time period, but again, this blood came from back in the very beginning of the world of Westeros with the children and then the first men and then the Andals and how it all goes. So nettles, for example, just a random use, um, they're unable to explain how she was able to bond with Sheep Stealer, how she was able to do this and claim this wild dragon when no one else in the entire history of Westeros has been able to claim a wild dragon. And she was able to. The thing followed her around. He loved her. She loved him. It was a great bond. A bond like all the other dragon riders. But there's like the description of Nettles shows that she's not Valerian looking. Okay, she's not from old Valyria. She doesn't have really the features of the Targaryens, like some of the other dragon seeds do. So it's like, where did she come from? How did she do this? Perhaps, just perhaps, one of her ancestors was of the blood of the forest, which allowed her to be able to tap into those magical abilities to be able to bond with an animal. Okay, I know the Targaryens and the people from Old Valyria with the spells and the magic, bonding dragons and all that to themselves, allow them to do dragons. But I think because of the blood of the forest that the people within Westeros have acquired from the children, it seeps out in many branches. It's kind of like I see it as the opening of House of the Dragon season one, where you have the blood flowing through all the different symbols connecting to this Targaryen that branches off this way to connect to this one to branch off. It's the same kind of thing. That blood has branched off, and it may not be as strong in those in the southern region because again, they're diluted. Okay, their blood is more diluted. You have the children blood mixed with the first men, and then that mixing with the Andals, which mixed with maybe some Dornish or someone from, one of the many different regions across the Narrow Sea as trade happened and marriages and all of that different stuff. Their blood is a lot more diluted. And so I think the ability is very much more rare in the southern region compared to the north, where those like the Starks, the ability to warg, to have green sight, to skin change, and all the other powers that are tied into this ancient blood are still present to this day, especially now with like the dragons bringing back magic, and it like triggers everything into a little magic and oh, dragons and Greenseers and wargs and oh my, right? But again, I think it all hinges because of the mingling of this original magical blood, much like the Valerians and their magic blending in with the dragons. Again, the children in the forest, the natives of that land blending with the first men, and then again the Andals, and either being from forced awful unions or marriage pact, this blood is present within Westeros. The children, even if we never like see the children really very much, except for the little bit with Bran, they still exist within the blood of the people that make up Westeros. As the faith of the Seven dominates the South, and the blood of the forest is all but forgotten, could there still be traces of it within the people of Westeros? If the first men truly carry the magic of the children in their blood, then so do the Andals, as diluted as it may be. The blood of the forest may not be as powerful as the blood of the dragon, but it may still flow through the veins of every Westerosi, from the humblest peasant to the highest lord. Perhaps somewhere deep within, the magic of the children of the forest still linger, waiting to be awakened. This is the forgotten story of the first men, the children of the forest, and the hidden legacy of the Andals. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share, and subscribe for more untold mysteries from the world of ice and fire.